All right. Okay. So anyway, mighty coach. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. So the whole point of anything that we're doing here is going to be related to fast, visible results rather than just kind of like doing stuff, right? So, and the key here is fast. All right. So next slide, please. Okay. So in this particular case, this is not a coaching model. This is a hybrid coaching and mentoring model. All right. So there are specific assumptions here that we have to deal with. Number one is that different environments are going to basically affect you in different ways. Okay. So that means, like sometimes, when you're with your family, it's going to be different than when you're at work. Right. Okay. The other thing is that talents will also basically are even if you have the skill, it doesn't mean that you're going to be applying the skill because different group dynamics ultimately affect you differently. Okay. And you also, it also assumes that certain people affect our emotions more than others, and sometimes in good and not so good ways. Okay. The other thing is that optimism, motivation, passion is all essentially affected by actions and reactions of people around us. Okay, so basically a coach that understands all of this stuff is going to be able to break barriers in days, not months. Okay, because you have a much bigger, complete understanding of the entire environment and everything that kind of goes with it. So that means that you have, and number 6, of course, if you have a complete picture of a person and their psychology and the psychology of the environment that they work or live in, that, well, basically that's going to give you better lasting results. Okay, so next slide, please. So first of all, everything that we're doing here requires pre-learning. So this is not like a coaching model that you can just kind of pick up and go. Okay, now this is a very simple model with a very complicated presentation. Okay, so let's just kind of look at the idea that there are, once you understand fundamental instruments and what they do and how they measure things, that you are going to be able to literally be able to see everything from the very beginning, so that you'll be able to make fast or help your people to be fast. Now, one of the key things with that is that, okay, so everything that I'm going to be talking about here is kind of inclusive of the whole coaching culture as well as the key learnings. Okay, so all of the different instruments and everything also connect to many of the key learnings, including a lot of the best practices. And the idea here is to, well, basically take best practices to the next level. So just because they're best practices now doesn't mean that they're going to be best practices later. So we're going to create new best practices with this particular model. All right. So with this one, you've got the different tools. You've got colored brain. You've got the emotional drive, which is basically why you do things. Colored brain is how you do things. You have culture evolution factors. Basically, what kind of a culture are you existing in? Are you, are you at the, in a blame culture? Are you in a leadership and rich culture? The environment you're in is going to affect how you are able to be or not be coached. Okay, so that's kind of the idea of this whole thing, is that without an understanding, I mean, it's kind of like if you're a surgeon, it's like, oh, okay, I'm just, let's just start operating, right? You don't have the complete diagnosis of everything that's going on. Well, then it becomes a little bit difficult to go ahead and start doing the proper type of surgery, right? So you don't want to go ahead and do surgery that is just kind of like haphazard, which is why we're, getting all of this information. Now, once you have all of this stuff, what ends up happening is that you create a situation where now you get to gamify everything that you come up with. Okay, so you help people to enjoy, to have fun in the process of creating the behaviors that they in turn, that basically they have created for themselves. Okay, And of course, that connected with managing and interpreting the instruments is essentially what gives you the advantage. Okay, and next one, please. Okay, so here's the flow of the MIT model. First, you have the discovery. So you have to understand, well, basically, the elements of what's going on with the person. What are the problems? What are some of the motivations? What are some of the demotivations? What are some of the hidden things that they don't really know that they have, but they have? So one of that tool essentially is, the first tool is the Create My Key tool, which was developed by Master Certified Coach Alex Karpov. Okay, so that one's not my tool. And he is, he's actually a physicist that became a coach. So he's like really into data and structures and all kinds of stuff. Okay. And then we use the CBC colored brain cards in order to basically identify primary motivators that help you to ultimately understand what's really driving you and what drives you in different environments. Okay. And so then we basically take all of this stuff and we analyze it. And then we basically look at the instruments, right? So now we go ahead and take the instruments and put those instruments like colored brain. It's also the management mirror, and of course the ocean tool, which defines your organizational culture. And so now that we've got all of this information, now we basically define gaps. Okay, and that's where the key is. See, if you're going to do coaching, you need to know where the actual gaps are, right? So the gaps are essentially ultimately going to be the key things that are going to make the impact, because the faster you can show impact, the easier it is for people to actually move forward and start being excited about doing things. All right. So, then, and there's also different kinds of gaps, right? So there's the goals, there's the barriers, there's the emotional gaps, communication gaps. There's all kinds of different gaps that are in this process. Okay. So ultimately, the idea is to execute this not just for the coach, but inside of the coachee's environment so that it ultimately is sustainable. Next one, please. Okay. Oh, wait, sorry. Well, let me just kind of go back on this. Okay. So, if you actually look at some of this stuff, okay, so the coaching culture is already kind of part of this thing, but it also connects to the 8 elements of life synergy. Okay. And it also kind of connects to the 9 best practices of both master and strategic team coaching. Now, one of the key learnings that I had is I used to think that life coaches were kind of hippies before. And so now that I, after of course going through this and all, all of the stuff going on here with Peter and everything else, okay, it's, kind of given me a total new light on that. So, okay, so now let's, okay, next, now we can go to the next one, please. Okay. All right. So this one basically identifies the unique benefits. And again, thank you so much to Wang Chin and Swan, who, really helped me to kind of clarify and get all of this stuff done, because I mean, without them, it would have, I just kind of, my brain is kind of out there. Okay. So ultimately, we can increase the speed of results. Okay. This model includes life coaching, executive coaching, disruptive team coaching, strategic business coaching, and ultimately coaching culture. So all of the stuff here is basically applicable for all kinds of goals, relationships, innovation. But remember, it needs to have that foundation of understanding all of the stuff that's going to help you to know what is really going on, not only in the person, but also in the team and the organization themselves. Okay, next one, please. Okay, so just kind of go over some of the tools. The first tool is the Create My Key tool. Okay, so this one basically has a series of questions, not created by me, created by Alex Karpov, that ultimately design or determine various fears, barriers, obstacles, things that we have that are ultimately preventing us from achieving specific outcomes. Now, the good thing about this is that not only can you do it as an individual, but when everybody does it, you also get the team version of it, where you can actually see the entire team and how the team compares to each individual, which gives you more data that you're able to really use in order to maximize the benefit for everybody. Now, of course, the key idea with the key is to remove all of the little key teeth, okay? And so that happens when we ultimately trash the barriers to success. Next one, please. Okay, tool number 2 is the colored brain. Okay, and Swan, so this one has also free training on the Colored Brain app that you can download. So don't worry about it. Okay, now the thing with the Colored Brain tool is that it connects everybody, so everybody can see already who's in their danger zone. You know, how it shows you how to be a better leader with this person, how to be more productive with this person. So all of these things are incorporated into it, how you can communicate better, and so therefore the coachee and their team can see each other and understand each other, and will understand potentially why some of the times people are driving you a little bit crazy. Next slide, please. Okay, so tool number 3 is the Colored Brain cards. Now, this is a process that, again, requires you to have a certain understanding of primary motivators, okay? Now, what happens is that each of so there's the online version, and there's also the physical version of these cards. And what happens is that each of these cards have a picture. That's all. They're just pictures. But see, the thing is, when you ask a question, any question, and then you say, please choose 5 cards that best describe how you're going to get this, or why this is this, okay, then what happens is that your brain literally goes into your subconscious and it starts looking for answers related to all of these different types of images and pictures. And so therefore you come up with much more clarity and much more potential understanding, not only from the coach's perspective, but also from the coachee's perspective, okay? And so this kind of gives you an understanding of what are the primary motivators. Next slide, please. Okay, and so now the next tool is the management mirror. So this one identifies perception gaps, okay? When you think you're doing a good thing, but the rest of your team thinks you're not doing a good thing, where so it's not about your attitude, it's literally about your strategy. So it's a lot easier to change strategy than it is to change attitude, okay? So if you believe that, oh, I should be more supportive, even though your team may think you're a control freak, that just means you're using the wrong strategy, not having the wrong mindset or attitude. So this basically is a 360 tool. Again, part of the things that we learned, you know, with the from the various modules especially in team and team coaching. And the elements here give you that level of understanding of how much of a gap there is between how you see yourself and how other people see you. So therefore you will basically close the gaps. Next slide, please. Okay, so the next one is the Ocean tool. Okay, now the Ocean, okay, next slide, please. There we go. Okay, so the Ocean tool. The Ocean tool is all about your organizational culture. So where's the culture? Where are you? Where are you starting? What's going on? So by understanding the culture, well, that kind of gives you an idea of the environment that you're in. But remember that we also have an idea of the environment because of the original Create My Key. When your other people from the team are doing it, you also have an idea of the environment when people are taking the colored brain test, because you can see everybody in there. And you also have an idea of the environment because you've got that 360 tool that we just did just a moment ago, and people can see where the gaps are. So everything here is related to coaching culture, everything. Okay, and this just gives you a broader overview of that. Okay, next one.
Hey, Arthur,
yes,
you have already reached 15 minutes, just to let you know. Yeah.
I thought it was like 10. Okay, sorry. Okay, all right, we'll hurry up. Okay, so anyway, okay, personal insights. So when you have the data, it transcends goals. You've got a lot of different things that are related. Next slide, please. Okay. So these are the categories of the Create My Key. I don't need to go through this. Again, this was created by Alex Karpov. And you can look through it in the handouts. So all of this, next one, please. Next one. Okay. So all of this basically goes back to the idea. Next one, not previous. Yes, there we go. Okay, so all of this goes back to the idea that you start with the awareness, okay, which is through the discovery. Okay, you confirm, right? Okay, is this right? Okay, then of course you go into a greater understanding and ultimately acceptance, which basically takes you back to the mentoring ability, using the data and create collaboration. Next slide, please. Okay, and all of this basically is very important. Now, this is super important because you have to have. What we're creating here is predefined communication. That means once you understand this, when you're doing the mentoring, you're creating key language factors that affect the success of the coaching, which also affects the speed. So which also affects the types of questions that you're asking. Next one, please. Okay, so for example, based on some of the tool-specific questions and also having the common language, you might say something like, let's say, for example, colored brain, okay, could you revisit your color frustrations to create synergy? Okay, management mirror, what new strategy could you apply in achieving the value of X you wish in your team based on what's coming out of these things, right? So each tool has got specific types of questions, but it's all connected to the language that you're creating for them. Okay, next one, please. Okay, and ultimately connecting all of the data gives you an understanding of the initial results. So you've got all of the different tools are connecting the data. Next one, please. Next slide. There we go. Okay, and so that gives you, ultimately the initial result. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, and so now you've got when you compare and you cross-reference everything, okay, so you're still looking at how all of this is relative to the environment. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and then ultimately, as you do the mentoring, you start implementing all this stuff, you start to see, because you take the Create My Key again, you start to see the final result, the keys start to go down. But remember, all of this is connected to how everybody else is interacting. So you're getting everybody involved in this. Okay, next one, please. Okay, and so this, okay, so actually that was actually the last slide that I was talking about. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so this one is the Squadly. Okay, and Squadly essentially is a gamification of behaviors. Okay, so this one connects goals for individuals, for teams, and also different teams and even organizational goals connected to behaviors. Okay, so how you can gamify the behaviors that you are coaching, because you're reverse engineering the KPIs into behaviors so that you can ultimately create the types of behaviors you want. Next slide, please. Okay, and that of course creates the entire culture evolution, which is where you can basically reference it against things next month. You coach up to start. Okay, because it's a lot easier. If your boss is coaching you, it's still your boss, right? It's like, oh, my boss, and they got the agenda, right? But if you coach up, that means immediately you start feeling like you have some power, and then it becomes much more interactive. And then everybody basically using the predefined language because everybody understands what it is. So you can actually get more benefit from understanding simply with a few words because you already understand the concepts because of the mentoring. Next slide, please. Okay, then you use this in order to ultimately create the greater purpose, which of course is creating this ideal working environment. And the methodology for change is essentially the coaching culture. The common language is used, unified identity. Everybody that's involved in this has to create their own fundamental name of their group, because then there's like, if you're not part of the coaching culture group, you're just kind of not in the in group. You don't get to call yourself, you don't get the buttons, you don't get the t-shirt. Okay, next one, please. And there we go, the end.